Hey, Nisha.
Oh, hey, Matt. Are you the one who texted me? Oh,
Yeah.
it is me.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
So we'll start in another, probably a few minutes.
Yeah, no problem at all.
I'm just gonna go on mute here for a second.
Take your time.
Matt, is there anything that I can do to help you with your video or
It just says that you haven't turned on that function. So,
turned on that function? Okay.
yeah. So what I'm thinking is maybe I take away, when we get to the demo, I'll take the screen and screen share for me, and then maybe video will come back up. I don't know.
Okay. The only thing I can think of is I can make you the host, which should basically enable you to pretty much do anything you'd like.
Yeah.
You want me
So
to give that a shot?
you want me to log off and then I can come back in as the host?
No, no, no. You can just become the host right now. I can make you the host.
Okay. Let me just see if that'll work.
Okay. Okay. So I just made you the host. Okay.
Okay. So the video looks like it's working now.
Yeah, yeah, we can see you.
Okay,
All right.
perfect. All righty.
Okay. Hey everyone, so I will give folks another 2 or 3 minutes to join and gather up. There's people joining from all sorts of parts of the world. So in about 3 minutes at 5:05 local California Pacific time, we'll get started. I'm going to put my slides into presentation mode. Ready to go. All right, folks, we'll start in 1 minute. All right, guys, everybody, let's get started. So welcome to the IoT, Artificial Intelligence and Robotics for K-12 webinar. And let's jump right in. So first of all, who are we? So this webinar is being given by 2 companies. I'm from Pixida. My name is Nisha Talagala. I'm the CEO and founder of Pixida AI. I've been in the AI space for quite some time. This is the 2nd company that I've founded in the AI space. My team and I, Sindhu, who's also on the panel here, have been working on operational machine learning and different aspects of AI for many, many years. And before that in software development, things like that. I have a PhD from UC Berkeley, and I do all sorts of things in the machine learning area, including, chair conferences, write for different publications and so on. And that's who I am. I'm going to hand it over right now to Matt to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Matt Dowling, and I'm the co-founder of Jasmn.Tech. And as a little background, I've been part of the IoT market since 2010, so early days. My background is data warehousing and business intelligence. I have a degree in mathematics and computer science from Cal State East Bay. And finally, I'm the former CTO of AT&T.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Okay.
You want to jump into the agenda? Yeah.
Sure. So the agenda that we have today, we're going to talk about why IoT/robotics and AI, and then we're going to move into how to use them together, and then take you through a use case, and then give you a quick demo, and then let everybody know how they can get started. So we're going to start off with just a little bit of a primer here. So digital transformation is really the way I think about kind of the intersection between robotics, IoT, and AI. So let's dive into what do I think digital transformation is real quick. Well, digital transformation has been around for a long time. So for example, they used to do, printed email or printed campaigns, and now we do email campaigns. So there's an example of going from print to digital. We also have kind of the traditional brick and mortar stores going to websites and being able to order things on the web. And then the one that starts to include robotics a little bit more in the forefront is the idea of building cars. So humans built cars historically, and now we have robotic environments that are blending together IoT and AI to build cars. And a good example of that might be Tesla as a way to think about it. So each discipline kind of plays a role. So IoT, is all about measuring everything that's going on, like say in a factory floor. And so the data acquisition and control of sensors and devices. And then you've got AI, making smarter machines and thinking and performing tasks that humans would do. And then finally, you've got the robotics, which is replicating, to some extent, human actions. And so the idea is that we see the next 10 to 20 years really blending the three technologies together and really kind of bringing together brand new forms of digital transformation that we haven't seen before. So we're really excited about what the future has to hold. Next slide.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, Matt. So as Matt has kind of described why, technologies like IoT and robotics are so critical to digital transformation. And as he described, they become, really they hit their stride when all three of these technologies, those two and combined with AI. So what is AI? Now, AI is many things, but for the purpose of this discussion, and a simple way to think about AI is how computer programs do things that come fairly naturally to the human brain. So you can think of things like recognizing sound, recognizing images, noticing when something is unusual, deciding strategies like planning out how you might want to win a game or, say navigate and budget your monthly expenses. All of these are various kinds of strategies and intelligence that humans have easy time doing, and programs find it extraordinarily hard to do. So why do we care about AI in this context? It's pretty much exactly as Matt said, which is when you have sensors that can measure everything, you have a massive ability to control hardware. What you really need is a brain to connect those two things together, and all three of them mean that things that were previously impossible for any of them alone now become possible. And then you have essentially fundamental transformations like a self-driving car, for example. So again, AI, IoT, robotics, and AI, they are a perfect combination. And why is that? First of all, you start with an IoT device, which allows you to measure the environment around you. Once you measure, you have data. Now, data by itself is valuable, but without understanding what it means, there isn't that much you can do about it. So now you've got AI, which knows how to learn patterns from the data. And once it learns patterns, it can use those patterns to make decisions, make recommendations, make plans, make warnings, things of that nature. And once it has these decisions, it can send those decisions back to the hardware that then knows how to take action on those decisions. So this cycle becomes possible because of the presence of both hardware devices, IoT and robotics, and AI for the analysis of the information. So now, question is, okay, now we're super excited. We want to be able to connect hardware to software intelligence. Now, how do I actually do that, and how do we build that?
Great. And so I'm going to take over for a few slides here. So the idea here is in this later in the demo, we're going to show you just a quick intersection between the hardware, the AI, and some of the programming that you need in order to blend the three together. And so on the right-hand side is just an example of the environment that we're going to show you, where we have a simple Arduino board with a simple sensor, and then we've added it to a platform, the blue background, so that it's a little bit more stable. And then we have a breadboard for kind of future growth of bigger and more exciting projects. So that's a little bit about what we'll show you during the demo. So go ahead. So the use case that I want to focus on with a water level sensor, and again, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of sensors that you can use in order to create use cases. But the one I wanted to talk about today is just using something simple that would give us some context to what we're going to see. So with a water level sensor, we use the example of a pool. And if the pool level of the water is dropping, one of two things is happening. You could have a leak, or it's just evaporation. And so what we're going to be doing is collecting data on some kind of basis throughout the day, and then have a decision made of whether it's a possible leak or if it's just evaporation. So some important information to have is that, in a pool, you'll usually see about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch of water loss per day. And the reason that it varies is because of the temperature outside and the humidity. So if the temperature is really hot and there's a lot of humidity, then you're probably going to lose closer to 1/2 an inch. If it's a normal, nice day, in the 70s, you're probably going to be in the 1/4 of an inch. So the idea is that during the course of a week, you could be losing 2 to 4 inches. And then over the course of a year, you're losing a lot of gallons of water. And so the idea is there's several reasons why you want to do a use case. Is you just want to kind of track your water usage, number one, or if you have a leak and you can detect it before it creates a lot of damage, then you've saved yourself a lot of money later. And so this is just an example of, the idea of some kind of sensor and then developing a use case around it. Next slide. So in a kit that you'll see that we'll describe to you later, one of the sensors that comes with the kit is a water level sensor that looks like this. And the idea behind the use case that we're going to do it is basically a do-it-yourself kind of idea, where you could leave the sensor in the pool up to the water level. And that would be where the little dots with the red box on the left-hand side, submerge it in the water, leave it in the water for a 24-hour period, have your Arduino board collecting data every 30 minutes. And then during the course of a 24-hour period, then you have some data here that you can now upload up into AIClub, and then it'll help us determine whether there's a leak or if there's evaporation. Next slide. So the possible outcomes, whenever you're thinking about developing an IoT use case, the things you have to think about are kind of what the outcomes, possible outcomes are. So in this particular case, we said if it's losing between a 0 and a quarter of an inch, it's normal evaporation. You know, probably no action is required, except maybe fill the pool up with some more water eventually at the end of a week. If it's a quarter of an inch to less than a half an inch, then you may, depending on what the temperature's been outside, you may have to think about just maintaining your pool and making sure that there isn't some kind of something else going on with your pool. And then if it's a half an inch to an inch and a half, then it looks like you might have a leak. And our recommendation from AIClub would be you better schedule some maintenance. And you could probably take your time because it's a slow leak. And if it's above an inch and a half, then all of a sudden, that's where you might have a real problem where it's leaking into the surrounding area of the pool, maybe into the lawn next to the pool or into your home. So if it's a backyard pool. So the idea is these are just some possible outcomes. And then the idea is that when you're building your use case, you think of these type of, different type of scenarios. And then you ask yourself the question, what should I do if one of these cases happen? So here's just a quick picture of the flow of how it would work. So you have the pool, you would take the sensor, and you would probably use longer cables than what you see in this picture, but you would submerge the water sensor into the pool. And then you would take the data that's being collected. And then at the end of a 24-hour period, during that 24-hour period, you'd be creating a CSV file. And then once the 24-hour period's up, then you'd simply upload the data in a CSV file format up into AIClub. And then at that point, AIClub would run its AI algorithms and come back with, the predictions that you saw on the previous page.
So I think this is where I'll describe some of the details, and then we will jump into our demo. So again, as Matt mentioned, how do we use AI for this use case? Basic idea here is that we will have the sensor installed in the pool, and then we will collect data from the sensor every 30 minutes. And so during the 24-hour period, we will get essentially 48 data points of what the sensor has observed. And this is called a time series data because it's essentially data per unit of time. And what we are interested in understanding is how the water level is trending across the day. And then depending on how it's trending, we will try to learn the pattern and make a prediction as to whether is this a normal trend, is it an unusual trend, or is it a leak, things like that. So this is how AI is being used. This is the data gathered from the sensor, and then this is what we are going to try to predict. So now the question is, what kind of AI do you use? So there's a lot of things obviously about AI that we're not going to cover in this webinar because we wouldn't have time, but just in short, the way to think about it is, this is what's called in AI land as a classification problem. Classification because you are trying to predict which category of situation do you have. Do you have a normal situation, a leak situation, and things like that. So anytime you're trying to predict a category, it's called a classification problem. And so we want an AI to be able to take 48 data points for a given day and say, today, pool is either leaking or it's not leaking. And that's basically it. So how do we map this data? So first of all, once you gather the data from the from the sensor, and you have lots and lots of examples of past history, you end up with a table that looks something like this. Every column of the table represents a particular timestamp where, like, this is the first 30 minutes of the day, the first hour mark, all the way up to the last 30 minutes of the day. Each one of these rows is an example for a different day. And then you have what's called a label, which represents the status of this particular one. So for example, this day was a normal day, this day was a leak day, and something in this pattern reflects that leak, and so forth. And then the more examples that you have, the more you form this training data. So this training data is what AI will use to learn what a leak looks like and what evaporation looks like. So you gather up a bunch of this data, and then you essentially train an AI to recognize leaks and tell the difference between leaks and normal operations. So why do we need AI? Why don't we just kind of look at the data? Part of it is because this is a real life use case and it has noise. You know, for example, the pool doesn't stay still all the time. The water keeps bobbing up and down. Sometimes sensors get pulled out of the pool, sensors make errors. And so because of that, you may not have a perfect data. You may have data with lots of up and downs that have nothing to do with leaks, you know? And while noise can confuse simple rules, AIs can learn patterns even in the presence of noise. And that's what makes AIs particularly useful for IoT use cases, is because the real world has noise in it, and sensor data in particular has noise. So what does noise look like? For example, here's noise. So you can see here, you know, I don't know how obvious it is to see here, but there are actually 3 different patterns of pool, you know, water loss in this. And your eye can probably kind of figure out that there are patterns, but you can see that all the patterns have big jars in them, up and down and sideways. If the water is bobbing up and down, people are jumping in the pool and whatnot. So it's very hard for a regular computer program to make out what your eye can see, which is that practically there are 3 lines here. And that's what the AI is, for all practical purposes, going to figure out from all the noise. So now we're going to show you a demo of how this can actually work in an environment, and and how you can do this. Now, one thing we've seen from the poll is that the majority of folks here are educators. So we'd like to kind of populate a bit about this is the kind of exercise that you can show in a class with your students. And if you have hardware kits that everybody can use, then you can actually have the students try out this experiment themselves. I'm going to stop sharing now and hand it over to Matt so that he can show you what the real hardware looks like. He's also going to show you his screen and show you what the software for the sensor looks like.
Great, thank you very much. So this is the exciting part of it. So in our classes, we recommend a set of devices that you see on the right-hand side here of the screen. And the first thing is the Arduino board, if you can see that. And then you get the blue board to mount it on, and you get some screws and some feet so it doesn't wobble around. You get this item here, it's called a breadboard, and this allows you to put the jumper cables that I'll explain in a minute. But the jumper cables will allow you to plug in to the breadboard, and then also be able to be plugged into the Arduino. And then you'll be able to add more and more sensors to your environment. And then the last part of it is the actual kit itself. So the kit that we have has a bunch of sensors. It's 37-in-1 sensors. And with the kit, you get this double layered container, and in it you'll see there's a bunch of sensors that are in it. And the one that we're going to show you today is the water sensor that's in the second level of the container. And so the idea is this is a simple example, just one sensor, but you can actually mix and match all these sensors together and create your own use case, which I think is the exciting part of it. So once you have your kit and once you've established your platform that looks something like this, where you're going to have a sensor, you're going to have the Arduino board, you're going to have your cables, and then you're going to have your breadboard, and then you're going to plug it in, and this cord will go to your computer where you'll have your software environment that'll run the Arduino and talk to the Arduino. On the left-hand side of my screen now, not the video, so you can click on my screen here, and you'll see an example of some code. And so with the sensor kit that you get, the sensor kit actually has sample code that you can start with, and it makes sense to start with that and then change that code to fit your use case example. And so here's an example of a code. You compile the code by simply uploading it to the Arduino, And then once it's uploaded to the Arduino, you have a little bit of an output screen here. And what you'll see when I'm using a sensor, the actual real-time data will show up in that screen. So I'm going to dip the sensor in the water. And of course, you start to see the data appearing in the screen. And then as I bob it up and down, you'll see that the numbers keep changing. And this is analog to digital converter. So it's giving you data, that makes sense for the sensor. And so right now, one of the exercises that you would do is, what does ADC 98 mean in terms of inches? So when we saw the use case earlier, it talked about inches, which is what, I understand. And so the idea is that I'll convert the 98 into some kind of level of inches in the program. And that's the kind of update to this Arduino code that I would do. And then I'll be able to, look and tell myself what's going on. But for AIClub, you don't need to do that. You can send this data, the raw data, up into AIClub and let it make the decision, so you don't have to do the conversion. And so all of this is explained in our class. And so this is going to give you, again, a quick demo, recap. You get a kit. You learn how to construct the kit, to put sensors on it. And then you get a really simple use case that you can start with. And then the idea is that, this should open up the door to more and more use cases as you start combining more and more sensors. So that's the quick demo. Back to you, and I'll give it back to you.
Sure. So what Matt has shown you right now is essentially how you put together the hardware. And so the hardware has the sensors, and then you can configure the hardware to essentially put it into wherever you'd like to measure the environment. And then you can, get that hardware to basically send data to your computer. So now you'll have a bunch of data inside your computer. Now I'm going to show you now keep in mind that in order to train an AI, you need to be able to have lots of data from lots of different days. So I'm going to show you what a representative gathered data set might look like here. So here's, for example, one that we use to train this particular AI, which we call water level training data with medium noise. So what does medium noise mean? Medium noise means that keep in mind, remember, we have 48 data points, one for every half an hour of the day. We have reporting so that the AI knows what it's looking at. Is it looking at leaks, normal, high evaporation? And it has the water levels. One of the beauties of AIs is that you don't really care what unit this thing is in. As Matt says, it's looking for a pattern. It doesn't really care if this is inches or centimeters. It just wants to know whether it's changing. So now when we have a file like that, how do we build an AI out of it? So you can basically go to this website called AIClub.world, and you can sign up for a free account. If you have a free account, if you don't have an account yet, you can go over here and it will say sign up, and then you can go ahead and click on sign up. Once you've signed in, there's an option here that says go to Navigator. This is where you will build your AI. So how do I build an AI for this thing? I'm going to build an AI service. I'm going to call it, say, leak predictor. Okay, I'm going to build a leak predictor. So now I have a comma separated value file with all of my numbers. It's on my local laptop. I'm going to bring it into the cloud, which is where the AI tool is running. Okay, and this is the data set that we just looked at, medium noise. I'm going to upload it.
Hey, Nisha, are you sharing your screen?
I thought I was sharing my screen.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. Yeah. There you go.
I'm sharing my screen again. So what I did is I basically I'm going to do it again just to be on the safe side. Just went to AIClub. So go to AIClub.world, go ahead and sign up for an account. And when you sign up, you'll see your avatar here. Click on your avatar, go to Navigator. And then you can build an AI. I'm going to give it a slightly different name now. So I'm going to say leaks. Okay. Now, bring in that file. It's on your laptop. So bring in the file. I'll say upload. This is the one with medium amounts of noise in it. Let's bring it in. got about 200 examples, so 200 different days of pool behavior. So let's give it a chance to load here. Okay, import it. All right, so you can see this is the same file we saw earlier. You know, first half hour, second half hour, all the way to the end, and then what kind of AI status was it that day. Okay, go in. Now, AIs are about predicting things. So what do I want to predict? I want to predict what the status of the pool is. Okay. So once you do that, then basically sometimes you know, AI algorithms need data to be prepared and cleaned in various ways, and that's what's happening here. As you learn more about it, you'll be able to understand more about what's going on here. But for now, for the sake of brevity, we'll just continue. And now what it is doing basically is that it is setting up a service, in this case on the Amazon cloud, which is going to be what will take in new data points and then make a prediction. And because it has been trained to, it will have been trained to distinguish between leaks and non-leaks, then that's what it's going to do. So now what's happening is that a variety of different AI algorithms are being trained to recognize the patterns in your data. And accuracy, the higher the better. So this one, basically you can see that this particular algorithm was able to predict, you know, perfectly for the test cases that it was given, all of the scenarios between leak, normal, and evaporation. So now what do? We basically go ahead and, you know, now we can predict. So now we have a service and we are able to, you know, send it new information, like on any given day. You can say, what's been the state of my pool in the past 24 hours? I put it in here and it will make a decision on whether or not that, you know, a particular day had a leak or had an evaporation. So in this particular case, for example, it believes that it had a leak. So this is obviously, you don't want to, you know, manually enter one by one, you know, 48 data points. So there's an easier way to do this, which is that you can basically take your, this is an AI that's essentially running on the cloud, but it has a way that you can integrate programs running on your laptop with it. So a piece of code, like in any language that you like, you know, in this case, example is Python, a piece of code that looks like this can, running pretty much anywhere that's network accessible, can send messages with information about the new status of your pool, the last, you know, 24 hours. And you can basically go ahead and send it over to the AI, which will then send back the result. So a little bit of code that looks like that is over here. This is basically running, you know, in a program editor. You can see that the address of my AI is here. And basically what I can do is I can put in data. For example, this is a data set of high evaporation, 48 hours. This is a data set of normal evaporation, things like that. So I can bring in a data set that has anything. In this case, it's a leak data set. I can basically run a program like this and run it. And then what it will do is it will take this data, send it, you know, using this command over to the AI service that's running, you know, in the cloud, and then it will get back a prediction. So this is the kind of way that you can kind of complete the cycle of your IoT mechanism. Remember, we said sensor gathering data, that your data is used to train the AI that learns patterns. Then when new data comes in, you know, the new pattern is sent to the AI makes a decision on what's going on in that pattern, sends back the decision. Then in turn, your IoT or your robotic system can now go ahead and take some action, like, you know, ring an alarm or do nothing, things like that. So you can see here that this is basically this particular data, because it was my leak test case, it came back as a leak. So that's basically a quick way of, you know, thinking about how you can run a full use case like this. And what it requires is essentially 3 pieces of work. Basically, you want to have the kind of hardware that Matt showed you, which is essentially something like, you know, the Arduino board in particular, a variety of sensors. This one measures water level. Others could do anything from, you know, temperature to taking photographs to detecting noise to things like that. You want to be able to set this up with an Arduino software in order to be able to connect it up, get the measurements, save them as files, use those files to train an AI pattern, and then we can essentially train the AI, and after that, new information from the sensor can be brought, into the AI live, and then a prediction can be made. So that's the demo that we wanted to show you guys. So now the next question really is, how can you do this yourself? So we have a bunch of programs that we offer here as educators. If you're interested in something like this for your class, please contact us, directly. We'll send you we'll put some email addresses later. But essentially, you can go to, like, for example, this URL, and you'll find that there's a bunch of programs there for, for doing various kinds of projects with this, this particular cycle, which is IoT connected to AI and then back again. So I'm going to show you what that site looks like really quickly for a moment so that you can see what's on there. So hold on. Yeah. So this is basically what you'll see if you get to that URL. You'll see some ideas of what the structure is. These are the things that you will need to learn, and practice. And then there's, some experiences and things like that. And then there are all sorts of different use cases that you can try out. So Matt, do you want to maybe comment on some of the additional? So these are the water level sensor use case is the one that we, hold on a second. The water level sensor use case is the one that we just, demoed to you very quickly. There's also others about temperature and humidity. Matt,
Right.
you want to say a minute or two about what these are about that are coming soon?
Yeah, so the ones we're working on is smart waste. And the idea is that you could use an Arduino board, and then you have 3 different trash bins, one for recycle, one for normal trash, and then maybe one for your lawn clippings. And then as you're putting items into each of the bins, it would let you know whether it's the right, waste going in the right bin. And it's going to really do a couple of things. It's going to introduce the concept of taking photographs in real time and then calling AIClub, behind the scenes with a API, and then be able to get real-time results back, opposed to loading it up in a batch mode. So that's pretty exciting. The other one is motion sensor for, like, security, where somebody passes a plane of a doorway or something, and then you can send either do an alarm or a light. And then the other one is the concept of a people counter. They use this a lot in retail stores, for example, or maybe you're having some kind of an event at your high school gym, and you want to know how many people are coming in and out of the gym. And then again, using cameras to help facilitate that. And then the last one that we have planned is the idea of a security keypad. There's a lot of things that you have to type a number in to get access to. So we're going to show you how to make a use case around that. And so the idea is, again, blend it with a camera and ask the question, is the right person opening the door? Maybe things like that. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up, but we're also looking for feedback from people as they're taking classes, and we can always add more classes to our schedule.
Yeah, and by the way, Matt, one of the participants pointed out that in these days, in the era of shelter in place, being able to count people could have a whole other meaning. Like, you may want, if there are too many people, you may not want to go to that place.
Absolutely. Or, one other thing that was talking about is, are people really 6 feet apart, right? So you could turn into not just people counting, but do proximity in terms of, from an AI perspective, analyze the photograph or the image in the video and ask yourself the question, are they social distancing? So lots of things that we can do. And, but there you go.
Yeah. Wonderful. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys in the, in terms of being informational content. I'm going to put up really quickly an email address that you can, you can actually, use if you ever have questions for any of us. Hold on just a second for me to share that. And we're going to then quickly open it up for questions. There's a Q&A section on the webinar. Please feel free to post all your questions there, and Matt and I will now answer them one by one. Meanwhile, if you want to reach us on, have any questions, if you're an educator and you're interested in having projects like this in your classes, we'd be more than happy to chat with you and try to help you. For example, we've had, school teachers, for example, who particularly like the idea of classifying recycling in cafeterias, because that is a kind of project that it is unique for every school. Every school's cafeteria looks a little bit different, plates and whatnot. It's a very good way for people to be both, socially aware and responsible, as well as technologically savvy at the same time. So that's the kind of project that, has many benefits in, a teaching context for anybody from, from families to schools as well. So we have about 3 minutes left in this webinar. So feel free to add any questions if you have any to the Q&A. I'd be happy to take them. Okay, there's a question. Let me see what it is. Actually, two. Yeah. Okay, Matt, there's a question for you. Could you please, do you want to just answer it live? Because we have the time.
So the kit that you could purchase along with the class, ranges anywhere from $115 to $120. It always depends on, kind of what the going rate is for different components. And that takes into account that we're going to pack it up for you and ship it to you and handling. You can also go to Amazon and we can give you a list of all the components and you can buy them yourself. But we found that it was probably better to order the kit and the class at the same time. So we have a lot of different options for you.
Yeah. And then I think to answer a couple of the others, I think, there's a question about whether we sell the kits. Yes, if you buy the class, we have the option of buying the kit from us, as Matt said, or you can also buy it yourself. It's much more convenient, of course, to buy it from us, and because we will put all the pieces together for you. But you have both options. There's a question, Matt, on is there a limit to the number of sensors we can use? We should probably point out that a single kit has a lot of sensors that you could reuse. So you don't have to buy a new kit for every class. There's a ton of things you can do with just one kit. Yeah,
the reason we picked this kit is because there are 37, different use cases where you can do the individual sensor test. And then just to kind of give you an example, hold on one second, I'll show you something. So here is something that we put together that would be a fire sensor that's in the kit. It also has a speaker, and then it also has a light that comes with it, and then your breadboard. So the idea is that when you put a flame next to this, it will sound off an alarm and a red light will go off. So this is an example of kind of what a next evolution of a simple, setup would look like to a more complicated one. And then they can keep getting more and more complicated. I've had 11 different sensors from this kit doing a use case, to give you an example.
So yes, I think a few others. There's a question of, is there a list of classes? So there's a list of classes on the AIClub website. You can go to this link particularly, and you'll see there are 2 classes right now that you can buy. There are purchase links for those 2. I'm going to just show that one more time if I have it. Hold on a second. Yeah, no, that's not it. Okay. Apparently, I don't know where I put it, but basically, there it is. Oh, perfect timing. So stop sharing, here again. Yeah, so basically you can go to this link. You'll see that there are 2 classes here that you can register for. These are self-paced classes. So when you register for these, you get all the materials and support, via a Slack channel where you can contact, people to help you at any time. And everything is there for you to build all of these pieces and all the way through to the AI and back.
Yep.
And let me just really quickly see if there's any other questions. Yeah, awesome. I think we've got everything and we are right on time. So thank you very much, everyone. For the folks who reached out and said that they would like their educators and they would like to bring this to their classrooms, I think we will contact you offline and set up some time to speak with you. And we'd love to have these technologies and these learning plans inside your classrooms. Thank you all. Appreciate it. So, and the video for this webinar will be, so the webinar will be recorded and a link to the recording will be sent out to everyone who registered. Thank you, everyone, again. Take care.
Thank you, Nisha. Bye-bye.
Bye.